When I was about 15 years old, I was living with my grandmother on reservation for the summer. On my first night, I went to sleep on the couch. It was a 1970s sitcom-style sofa, and it was uncomfortable. But after a few tosses and turns, I finally drifted off. But I kept waking up, trying to keep my eyes closed with no effect. Then my eyes fluttered open, but I wasn't fully awake. My grandmother lived in a single-floor apartment complex, and the apartment itself didn't hold that much space. It was almost claustrophobic, but it wasn't that. It was something else. That's when I got this uneasy feeling that something was in there with me. My tribe and people always believed in the supernatural and paranormal. It isn't uncommon to hear a ghost story in my family, especially from my grandmother who was sleeping in the next room. Before I started to drift off, a voice, a hushed voice, interrupts the silence. "Time to take your medicine." I froze after I heard those chilling words. It was definitely a woman's voice, and she talked in a raspy whisper that had me in a place of anxiety. Even though I heard it once, it kept ringing in my head. Then my curiosity took over, and I low-key let my eyes pan around the room. There was nothing until my sight reached the kitchen. What I saw left me in cold, shivering dread. An apparition in form of a woman in an old-fashioned nurse's gown stood in the entrance of the kitchen facing my direction, probably knowing I was awake. I slowly grew more anxious and paranoid. I started hyperventilating. Then I heard footsteps getting louder against the hardwood floor. I saw the outline of the nurse standing over me. At this point, I couldn't move, like I was in sleep paralysis. Now, I couldn't breathe, which made me pass out. The next thing I remember, I was still on the couch, and it was the afternoon. After getting up, my grandmother came into the living room. I told her everything that had happened the night before. The next thing she said scared me. Did she say hello? I'm half Japanese, female, living in Japan, and work as a translator-interpreter. A few years ago, I got hired for an awesome project as an interpreter for a producer and an award-winning director for a movie that was to be filmed in Okinawa. Anyway, we got flown to Okinawa, and I was excited on so many accounts, plus it's my first time in Okinawa. Everything was amazing. The friendly, warm Okinawan people, the food, the weather, and the beautiful beaches until we reached the resort hotel. 3 key team members, including myself, were on the same floor. Our rooms were side by side. I remember as I walked up to my room door, I felt like something was off. I knocked firmly 3 times on the door, something I was always told to do by my father, who has traveled around the world for work. And as I opened the door to the room, about 6 feet away, I saw an apparition of a lady, standing there looking at me. Well, shit. But I had no choice. I'm here for work. She looked like a Japanese lady in her 20s or 30s with long dark hair. It was neat. She was wearing a long light-colored, bluish-white dress with some sort of faint floral print, as if it had faded with time. She also looked darkish overall, energy-wise, if that makes sense. Like there's a slight darkish gray mist emitting from her. I stood at the entrance and spoke politely in Japanese. "Hello, excuse me. I'm not here to disturb your peace or your space. I'm here just for 3 days of work, and I will leave after that. Thank you for understanding." I bowed deeply before entering. It seemed like she understood me and mostly left me alone, although she barely left the spot she was standing at and just watched me whenever I was in the room. Each time I had to enter or leave the room, or had to go to the kitchenette, toilet, or bath areas, I would have to walk by her. My best friend was in between jobs then, and whenever I was back in the hotel room, she would spend the entire time on the phone with me so that I was less afraid, since being on the phone meant I was distracted from the lady, who was always looking at me. I could feel her watching me even when I showered. So I had to have my best friend on the speakerphone while I showered. The kitchenette area near where she usually stood was always colder than the rest of the room, even though the air conditioner wasn't there. I was really grateful that it was quite a spacious room, enough for 4 people. There were 2 beds and 2 futons for the tatami area, so this gave me some space between me and the staring lady. I slept with the lights and TV on, but around 2 to 3 a.m. I would wake up in shock, and that's because she had come closer to me and watched me sleep. It happened every night I was there. I got a feeling that she was just curious about someone who could see her, but nonetheless, it was quite a nerve-wracking experience. Before I left, I bowed to her again and thanked her for sharing her space. This is my experience I would like to share with everyone about some of the encounters I remember having. It started when I was very young. My parents to this day remember me always screaming in the night for them to come to me. The first encounter I can remember was when I was a kid. I remember getting ready for my first day of school. At the time we were living on post at Fort Sam Houston. I remember waking up at 5 a.m. to get dressed for school, and I heard this loud, strange humming noise coming from outside my window. When I opened the window, I saw this large silver UFO. I can remember this vividly, even till this day. It was so large it covered the whole window. The only thing I could see of it was the silver aluminum from the ship. It had white lights on the top, and these blue lights at the underside of the ship. It freaked me the hell out, and I slammed my blinds shut and screamed for my dad. When he came in, I told him what I had seen. He laughed and opened the blinds, and nothing was there. From that day on, I had constant nightmares at night that felt realistic. I could never understand anything they said, but they could understand me. I remember in one dream, I would try and scream for help before they took me with them, and I would be paralyzed and unable to scream for help or get my parents' attention when they took me. I would then be put on an examination table, and they would just look at me as they were studying me. They never did me harm, but they would just observe. I remember being in my early teens, still having the same dreams. I finally built up the courage to speak with them. I remember the first time, I was about 12. They took me as usual, but this time, I just let them take me. I had a strange, calm feeling this time when they put me on the table. I asked them what exactly they were trying to do. The one alien told me they were trying to figure out how to make people live forever. They then asked if I felt safe. I told them yes, and asked if they would mind showing me around their ship. I don't remember many details, but the ones I do remember is seeing another person being examined, and he was undergoing surgery. They then took me to the command center, which had a lot of big monitors with strange writings, and underneath the floor was like glass, and you could see through it. I was so amazed because I could see Earth, and it looked so beautiful. They could read my mind, and they could tell I was pleased, and I told them that they were free to let me come with them, because I wanted to learn more about them. For a while, I would go back, and instead of being examined, they would take me around the ship, and I met a few different aliens, 3 to be exact. Their faces were slim, they were bright green in color, very skinny and long arms and legs. They wore nothing, and they seemed to really grow on me, and we started to have a friendship. I was able to start to understand them, but it wasn't speech, it was telepathic communication with me, and I would be speaking out loud. One time, they took me into a big green field. It was like a maze and not on Earth. Not sure where it was exactly, but it was very peaceful. Nothing there but hedges and fields of grass. We talked there 2 times. The third time we talked there, they told me that they would now have to leave me alone for a while, and that I would only see them one last time after this. The last time I would encounter them was very strange. They picked me up at night, laying in bed, and this time I was back on the examination table. I saw one of my friends, and I asked him what was going on. He told me not to be scared, but they wanted to test something on me, and if I was okay with it, they would be unable to see me ever again. I was very sad and told them I didn't want to lose them as they were very close to me. He told me that this was very important to them, and they could really use my help, and that it could change the future of their research. I agreed, and then another alien I didn't know had me follow him to this pod. It was egg-shaped, silver, and had bright red lights around it. It had a chair inside with the glass that would cover it. I sat in the chair, and I was scared because there were large sharp objects hanging from inside, and they looked like drills and saws. I asked him for my friend, and 2 of my friends showed up. They held my hand and promised me I would be safe. The other friend behind him reassured me his words, and then the other alien had a long needle in his hand. It was about the size of a large medicine syringe, with a needle maybe 2 inches long, and there was a neon green fluid inside of the syringe. I asked if this was going to hurt, and they told me yes, but to remember that it was helping them. I asked them what it was, and they said they would tell me after. So I was ready, and they could tell, and they injected the fluid into my left arm. It hurt a lot, and I was crying, and they could tell I was in pain, but shortly after it subsided. I noticed 3 big green fluid-filled blisters on my arm, and then he told me what they had injected into me was the serum that would make you live for eternity. They told me that I should not tell anyone what they did, because it was very secret. My 2 friends gave me a last hug goodbye, and the one that gave me the shot waved goodbye as they sent me back home. When I woke up in bed, I rolled over and looked at my arm. And I'm not lying, there were 3 green welts on my arm. When I put my finger on them, they popped green fluid on my bed sheets. I popped all 3 and I was kinda scared. I yelled for my dad. He ran in and saw my arm and rushed me to the ER. I didn't want to tell the doctor what had happened out of fear of them thinking I was crazy, so I just said I had no idea what happened, that I just woke up and had the green welts on my arm and they popped. The doctors took samples and prescribed me some chemical burn cream to put on them. I still have 3 circular scars on my left arm, and they are very faint now, but they stayed visible for years. I always wanted to share this, but I have no idea why they were so nice to me and chose me for the experiment. I never saw them after that, and everything stopped. No contact, nothing. I just thought it was strange that I missed them too, and I wished them well, and would like to think that maybe I did something to help mankind in the future, and was glad I could help them.